right, Connor, tell us about your list.
All right, so I guess I'll go Eric's route and go 10-1. So just like Nate, I got Cheetos at number 10. Apparently, I have two similarities to Nate, same positions, but we'll start with Cheetos at number 10. Yeah, I same with Nate. I probably should have put the puffs on here because I actually do like the puffs a little bit better, but the crunchy ones are you have a lot more access to them, I guess, because they don't make snack size bags for the puffs, unfortunately. So a lot more access to the crunchy ones, so they're good. Then I put Pringles at number 9. I did put the original ones. I think for me, the pizza ones are probably actually my favorite flavor. But the thing for the pizza ones is for me is that they're a bit strong when it comes to their flavor. So one thing I've done with the original Pringles that I've probably never done with any other flavor is, especially just sitting in my apartment, like either playing games or when we're on Twitch, when we have our break moments where we have our this crunching is brought to you by blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Um, I've sat down and eaten like a whole can of these before. Like, unfortunately, I know that's bad, but original ones are the only ones I've ever done it with because their flavor is just like it's not as strong, so I don't get tired of them as fast. Even though I like the pizza ones better, so I put those on there. Then I guess my weird one that a lot of people would probably go ugh at number 8 is I've got kale chips. If they're made right, they're actually really good. They have these ones that they sell in like containers that just aren't as good. They're just kind of like I wouldn't really eat them. But I know my mom has made like homemade kale chips before in the oven, and you get the right amount of salt and the right amount of just like a little bit of vinegar on them, and they're fantastic. Like I said, I know a lot of people would go like, ugh, kale, gross, but I really like them. So then, as I mentioned, the other similarity I have to Nate at number 7, same exact spot. I got Thin Mints. Nate was kind of like, between Samoas and Thin Mints. Thin Mints are definitely 100% my favorite Girl Scout cookies. I know we recently did a poll on Twitter, and Thin Mints was the victorious Girl Scout cookie flavor, so because they are the best, obviously. But I will say, the only way to eat Thin Mints is you got to put them in the fridge. Anybody who doesn't put them in the fridge before you eat them, you're eating them wrong. Um, then number number 6, I put Goldfish, specifically the Parmesan Goldfish, the best goldfish flavor out there. And this is the same thing for me with like the Pringles. I've sat down and like eaten a whole bag of these Parmesan Goldfish before. They're so good. Um, I used to really like the original Goldfish when I was growing up, but then I discovered how what I was missing out on when I got the Parmesan ones. They have this one bag that's like a mix of Parmesan and pizza Goldfish, but I just don't find that as good as just the Parmesan on their own. So then at number 5, I've got moon pies. This is something that unfortunately I tend to forget about when I'm like going to the store looking for snacks because I've always really liked these, but a lot of times they're kind of hidden in some more
Hmm.
obscure places than some of these other snack foods are. So I kind of forget about them, but I didn't have a good picture for it, but I really like the double decker moon pies. Those are really good, and I've always liked marshmallow, just like marshmallow in stuff. So, and I kind of grew up eating moon pies too. They were, whenever I'd have like snacks or something, they, I would always have moon pies. So, got them at number 5. Then at number 4, it's funny because I don't think it was until I started talking to Eric and Zach, on a regular basis again, that I really got back into eating fudge rounds because I'd had them before, but just not very often. I just thought it was like, like, yeah, these are good, but nah. And so, but then I started buying them and eating them again, and I'm like, man, these are really good. And then once Eric introduced me to the pairing them with milk, I was like, yep, these are awesome. So, um, but they're as you can see later on, they're not my favorite little Debbie snack, but they're definitely number 4 on my list. Then at number 3, I've got just regular good old chocolate chip cookies, and I can't remember I I don't remember what Nate said when he was talking about these. I kind of zoned out for a second, but if you're gonna have chocolate chip cookies, they gotta be warm and soft,
Hmm.
because if you you know if they are hard and crunchy, because some people that sit around and eat these like the original, like the regular Chips Ahoy that are like, you know, dry and like really crunchy.
Blasphemy.
I'm like, I don't understand how you could ever like that. You know, chocolate chip cookies are meant to be, because I get that you're not always going to get them warm, but like if they're made right, even if they're not warm, they'll still be chewy, which is the important part. So, and then obviously, just like the fudge rounds, if you're going to have chocolate chip cookies, you got to have milk. And, you know, I wish those glasses could be a little bit bigger so, you know, the cookie could actually go in without you having to bite a little bit off of it. But I'm not going to complain too much about that.
That's a first world problem there.
Well, it's still one of my rest in peace Vine. One of my favorite Vines I ever saw was one of Obama, and he was sitting at a desk with like a glass of milk and a chocolate chip cookie, and he was like, you know, went to go put the cookie in, but it wouldn't go down in the glass because it was too round, and he was just like, thanks, Obama. So then at number 2, I got deep fried mac and cheese bites. These, unfortunately, these are not something that you exactly have easy access to. They require a little bit more prep and work to go into them, but if, you know, I know Sheetz has them, and my school has made them before, like in their cafeteria, and, you know, I like deep fried anything, and I guess I consider these more of a snack, because I really love deep fried okra, but I guess I wouldn't really consider that much of a snack. I've never sat down and snacked on them. Places don't serve that as a snack, so I guess I went with the deep fried mac and cheese bites instead. Had to get another savory thing in there. There's been a lot of sweet things on here, so the highest rated savory food. And then finally, number 1, I said that fudge rounds weren't my favorite Little Debbie snack. I've been eating these things when I was growing up. My nanny used to get them for us all the time. It was honey buns and Kool-Aid were like basically what that was my fuel when I was growing up, was honey buns and Kool-Aid. Black cherry Kool-Aid specifically, and this is another food that I kind of went away from for a little while, kind of like the moon pies. But then when I got got my own money and was able to start, you know, going out and buying my own stuff, I started buying them again. And yeah, I have to control myself when I buy these, because I'll eat like all 8 of them that are in like the Little Debbie package in like one night. So I'm sure Eric probably does that with fudge rounds, like with all 10 of them in the package. He's got to control himself.
I try to limit myself to 2 at a time.
But yeah, so that's my top 10 snacks list, and I guess I'll let Zach go now.
Yeah,
to round it out.
Another solid list here. It's making me hungry for sure.
If only it wasn't 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I know. I've got my top 10 favorite snacks here on the screen, and I'll start with number 10 like you guys did. Now, like I said before, if this was an all-time thing, the s'mores Pop-Tarts would be on this list, and they'd be higher because I grew up with those at school. But chocolate fudge is a more recent flavor I was introduced to. Really by my dad. He was the first one. He got them from the store and brought them back, and they have to be toasted.
Shout out.
Yeah, they got to be toasted though. They're really good though. I think they're the best Pop-Tart flavor now. Pop-Tarts are still pretty good though. They're a solid treat as well. And then number 9, I've got chocolate chip cookies. These would be. The reason I've got them at number 9 and not higher is really just because if you want them done right, you do have to do a little bit of work for them. Because it's one of those things that, like Connor and Nate said, it's homemade is vastly improved over the store brand ones and whatnot. And when you get them right out of the oven, they're good. And Steak and Shake surprisingly has a really good recipe or something for them, because I was surprised. Yeah. And not only how big they were at Steak and Shake, but also the quality of them was really good. It was shocking to me how good they were, to be honest. But they're a nice treat. And then Oreo, I've got ahead of them, another cookie. Oreos are probably the easiest thing to eat. They're another one where they're so small, where you can eat a couple of them and still feel good. But yeah, I'm one of those people though that eats the Oreos like the pictures got the bite out of. I've seen people like rip off the crust and eat the cream and then the crust. But like to me, it's so much better together when you combine the two. It's perfect. I mean, and it's no work too because you don't have to make them like the chocolate chip ones, but they're really good. Also good in other things as well. Is like bases for pies and stuff too. Oreos are very versatile in my opinion, which is why I've got them at number 8. And then the Doritos story we've all been waiting to hear. I'll tell it again. I don't know if I've said it on the podcast. Probably not, because I don't think maybe on a Twitch stream when we were eating them one time. But yeah. So I have an interesting relationship with Doritos because I used to be. I don't know about a fanatic, but I was pretty pleased with Doritos, especially the nacho cheese kind.
Pretty pleased. That's an interesting way to phrase that.
Yeah. An interesting relationship. I like this story.
No, they were good for me, but I was in extended day in elementary school one time, and we always got like a snack and a little juice box every day, and
of course
I got a bag of Doritos and a juice like I always do, and I had them, and they must have been really old because they were super stale. I mean, they were like one bite and you know that these are bad type of stale. And then for whatever reason, after that moment and that experience, I never wanted to have Doritos again, and I shunned Doritos for like 10 years or so. Maybe less than 10 than that, but it was a while. It was basically I'd forgotten the taste. Let's just say that I'd forgotten the taste.
Wow!
After that bad experience, that's how bad it was. But we were at South Carolina. We were at a family reunion, and
Hilton Head.
I was with Hilton Head, South Carolina. I was with Eric. Connor was probably there. I don't remember, but Eric was doing something on a tablet or phone or something. And I was watching, and he had this big party-sized bag of cheese Doritos, and he was eating them like they were like he was eating them like I know he had them ranked number 2 on his list. I've seen him eat these things. They are deservedly number 2 on there. And so
once again, Zach is making it sound like that Eric is fat.
Sorry, Eric.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
I gotta paint the story the way I saw it.
It's okay.
So
I'm enjoying every second of this. So it's
chowing down on these Doritos, and I'm looking at him like, damn, he is really liking these things. So I'm like, okay, I know it's been like 10 years or something. I remember I didn't like Doritos, but I remember I used to like them a long time ago. I was like, okay, Eric's doing it. You know, he's like a big brother sort of thing. I'll do it. I'll take a Dorito and see how it is. And it was good, man. It was good to the point where I started eating more and more. And then and then I got hooked on them, and then I started eating them again. Like when my parents would get them and stuff for them, I would start eating them. But that's one of those things, and I've told Eric it before. I don't think Nate's heard that story, or I don't know if Connor has. But
I feel like I probably have. It's just
you probably have. Yeah. So I didn't even tell Eric at the time. I told him that like many years down the road after that. I was like,
yeah,
hey, man.
Like at me. He was like, remember in Hilton Head when you were eating those Doritos? Like, I was like, what?
Eric, it was just another Dorito to Eric. For me,
he's like, I didn't like them back then. You got me to like them. I was like, what?
Like, Eric's like, when were you eating those Doritos? And Eric was like, what, you mean like 5 minutes ago?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So that's my story with Doritos, guys. Who knows? Maybe the next time I eat a stale one, I'll be turned off from them for another 10 years, but I doubt it.
Don't worry, Eric will be there to save the day again.
Yeah,
like,
Eric.
Don't forget the taste. Don't forget the taste.
Yeah, but that goes to show you when it's stale, it's bad. And then I guess number 6 on my list here. I didn't originally have this because kind of like Nate, I didn't really consider ice cream as a snack food, but when I saw Eric put a Ben & Jerry's on the list, I was like, he can't get away with that without me doing one. So I picked my top Ben & Jerry's flavor, Chunky Monkey. it's just got a lot of really good things in it. I mean, you can't go wrong with any of the Ben and Jerry's, but that would be my go-to. Yeah. So, but I do like the Chunky Monkey kind, so that's why I got that where it's at. And then I got Cheetos at number 5.
You're about to say Chia.
Yeah.
I didn't see that coming.
I was like, where is he going with this?
Cheetos. They're good, man. They're a good chip. They're really solid. The biggest downside, like everybody who's had these, though, is they know their fingers are all orange after them. That's the downside.
The best part. You get to lick them.
Maybe when I was a kid I did that, but I don't do that anymore.
I mean, I'm certainly not doing it with the Corona thing going on right now, but
yeah. So, but no, I never really did that, and it's if you don't have a napkin nearby, it's like, oh man, but you know, they're really good. They're especially the crunchy kind. I think is a lot better than the puffs. And they have other flavors that are good too. But the traditional regular kind is the standby. That's the standard to get. So yeah, I got Cheetos there at 5. Then at number 4, Nate was talking about his onion strips earlier. Yeah, I picked a higher quality version of that. A little bit more onion with this, but
less batter.
True. The onion rings, I mean, these aren't something that's, you know, very readily accessible. You can get frozen and heat them up if you really want. But no, like if I'm ever at a restaurant or anything, and a lot of times they have like sides you can pick from, and if it's between like fries or onion rings, I'll always go onion rings. I just like them a little bit better than fries typically, and you can dip them too. I mean, you can dip fries as well, but that sauce, I'm not sure what kind of sauce that is, but I do know onion rings, whatever sauce they usually serve with them, it's a good pairing. But you can eat them plain too.
Well, we'll see, Zach. See, where you've gone wrong is that when they give you a choice of fries and onion rings, you say tater tots.
Tater tots are good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I got onion rings. I'm gonna put onion rings ahead of that. Nate, you want the onion ring side too?
I would as well. Yeah, in that situation.
All right. What about you, Eric?
Wait. Sorry, I had to step away for a second. What?
I told Zach, I said that where he's gone wrong is that because he said when you say fries or onion rings, you say onion rings, but I said when they say fries or onion rings, you say tater tots.
Oh, I mean, I'm a fry guy more than anything, but I didn't think about the tots, but no, I'm a traditionalist with the fries, unless it's maybe like, I mean, some of these places don't. Well, I guess Burger King does. Like their fries are meh. I'd probably go onion rings there, but like anywhere else, like give me the fries.
Okay, all right. So yeah, they're classic. They're good. Always another thing too with these that's fun to do is you put them up to your eyes and make it look like you have glasses on. I mean, come on, we've all done this before.
Never done that.
Yeah, we've all done that before. What?
Zach has gotten like so creative with his snacks.
Maybe when I was like 7, I might have. But
all right, so my number 3 pick, kind of combining. You know, some other people have had some chips and dip on theirs, but this picture, I've got chips with a little pairing of guac and salsa. I mean, everybody knows I love guac. I love salsa just as much though, and really, it's one of those things where you want to switch back and forth. You don't want to eat if you have the choice. Obviously, you have both. You put a little bit of salsa on, you put a little bit of guac on. That's amazing right there. I mean, if you have queso, that's a plus too. But you got to remember these chips are only so big, so you got to put the best ingredients on, which are salsa and guac. So that's a classic Mexican tradition.
I would say I would agree with Eric on the queso being the best.
Yeah, I know how you feel about guac, but yeah.
I mean, I like salsa too, but
yeah. The guac on my picture looks sad compared to Nate's. I would definitely take Nate's guac over. But still, guac is guac. I'll eat it. Then at number 2, I've got the classic movie time snack, movie theater butter popcorn. I don't care who makes the popcorn. This is Orville Redenbacher, but it really doesn't matter. I haven't had a bad experience with popcorn. It's classic at movies. I just wish it wasn't priced as much as it were, and I would get it all the time. But I guess if you have a loyalty rewards or something, you can get a better deal with movie theaters on it. But even just watching at home movies and cooking some in the microwave, it's easy, it's quick. It's another thing where you can just snack on and just. I mean, I really struggle with this at movie theaters when I get like a thing of popcorn. Not that if I get one the size of this, I don't have to struggle about it. But if I get the small kind, I gotta struggle to get through the previews without eating any because I want to say something in the movie. It's a struggle. It's one of those things where it's like if you give me like $1 million and I have to watch through like 20 minutes of previews like theaters do nowadays. And I can't eat a single popcorn, I'll pass the challenge. I'll get the money, but it'll be hard. It'll be a hard challenge for me.
I was about to say, I would think you'd do it for $1 million.
Yeah,
I would do it. But
what if it was for $20?
$20?
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't know. It'd be hard.
I want money.
Yeah, it would, but it's just hard not to resist one. Like you would be thinking about it for like 10 minutes, but then. Like maybe the 13th minute you get like you don't think about it and then your instinct is just hand, bag, mouth. You know?
Yeah.
or like you'd be thinking about it and you'd be like trying to sneak one. Like if I can like sneak one of these into my mouth, like.
I mean, just the smells coming off are just hitting your
Cameras
nose.
everywhere, bro. Cameras everywhere, bro.
Yeah, for $20, I don't think I'd take that too seriously.
Contact your friend to like make the cameras go down for a second.
All right, and then. On my number one spot, kind of like Eric. I mean, if I really wanted to, I could fill a whole top 10 of Reese's. But these are the best, chocolates of all time, in my opinion. Reese's, and it's really not even close. And to me, the peanut butter eggs. I mean, they're all peanut butter, but the eggs kind. We really were in eggs theme last month with it being Easter, but these have the best proportion of peanut butter to chocolate. It's more peanut butter than you get in the normal cups. I've had the sticks like Eric showed earlier. They're good. I mean, everything by Reese's is good, but these are classic. These are what you would taste like in the normal peanut butter cups, but it's just a little bit more, and it's the better ratio, which is more important. So
agreed.
Agreed. Easter, yeah, you agree with this? So yeah, when it comes to Easter, the Reese's peanut butter eggs it's amazing. I wish they had these year round. But they have other variants, I guess, like the Christmas trees and stuff. But the eggs, they're great. Love them. Like I love all my lists. Anyone want to comment, I guess, on anything on my list before we go on to the next topic?
Well, the one thing I guess what surprised me most about your list was that guacamole wasn't number one. With you being
your Twitter handle,
that's really
guac life.
I thought for sure, but.
Yeah, see the guac for life thing that really originated back in like 2016 or something. I don't know if Nate was in this class, but
that was so 3 years ago.
Yeah, no, guac is still good, but
and
back in 2016, Eric, you got me on another guac story here, but I got time for it. I'll do it. So I was down in Key West with my family, right, and we're watching the cruise boats and stuff. They're pretty massive, and if you've ever been in the Keys, there's a lot of street performers and stuff doing various like circus type of tricks, like sword swallowing and stuff like that going on. There's a whole scene of that type of stuff going around. And there was this lady who had like a little guac stand where she was selling guac and chips and guac and salsas and stuff. And we got some, and it was so good. I was like, dang, this is really good guac. And then I actually ended up doing for one of my high school classes, I think it was like Principles of Entrepreneurship or something.
Oh, yeah.
We had to come up with a business or a service or something, and we had to make a huge PowerPoint and a huge Word document about our product or service and basically say how we would start it up, how much money we would need, what our business model would be like, and all these different business things. And I actually made for mine a thing called the Guac Stop, and I made a guacamole food truck with a menu centered around guac. I mean, you could get all kinds of guac. I would make all these different flavors and stuff, have different side dishes and stuff related to guac. And I was obsessed with guac. So when I made my Twitter account, that's why I changed. That's why I made that name Guac for Life. Don't get me wrong, it's really good, but given the choice, Eric, I'd take the eggs.
I got you, man.
I feel like you could make some good money if you actually were able to go through that. That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, no, I mean I'm not saying that it's I'll show you the logos later after the podcast that I have for the food truck. But yeah, it's one of those things that's not going to be like my goal in life or anything, but it's one of those things where like, maybe one day down the road I'll actually follow through with this. But Nate, were you in that class? I can't remember if you were or not.
I think I was. I did that same project.
Yeah,
I don't remember what I did on.
Yeah,
I don't think it was that memorable.
Mark's was memorable to me. His presentation. He was like a gambling thing in Las Vegas.
Right.
That was memorable to
right.
me, but because Mark loves to gamble. But yeah, that ends the snack food talk and the random school stories I'm sharing now. So we'll move on to the NFL.
Well, real quick before we move on, if we get famous and like eventually we're doing appearances and stuff, if you happen to come across this episode and just remember these snacks, and if we get to where we're doing appearances and photographs eventually, bring us these and we will be so happy with y'all. Just look us up in the future, okay?
You can get autographs, pictures, whatever you want from us.
Eric and I are going to be in some serious Little Debbie commercials.
Yeah.
You guys are these folks.
Little Debbie, we're calling for you.
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
It's okay. All right, so now we're going to talk about the top. We'll transition to top 10 NFL teams of all time. Connor, you can start us with your first list here.
All right, so I'm going to make this mostly brief because I know we've spent a lot of time on the other list. So, but. So I'm going to go 1 to 10. I'm going to go 1 to 10. And so obviously number 1, there's no other team that you could put number 1 other than the 72 Dolphins. I mean, the only team in NFL history to go undefeated. It was 17-0. And it was funny. I was watching the NFL Network has produced these like America's Game, like that series, and it details like each of the Super Bowl teams, and they'll get like 2 or 3 players or coaches from that team to like kind of narrate throughout the episode like what was going on. And they were talking about how, because the final score of that Super Bowl was 14-7, but actually like it could have been 17-0. They were lining up for a field goal with the kicker, and basically they were thinking like they got really overconfident is what happened. They're like, oh, all right, this is like going to be perfect. We're going to be 17-0. The score is going to be 17-0. Like perfect. And so, but then the snap or something got botched, and like, then the kicker like went and threw the ball up to like nobody, and the Redskins like intercepted it and ran it back for a touchdown. So that's why it was 14-7. So, but yeah, there's no other team to put number 1 than the 72 Dolphins. As much as I would have liked to probably put one of these Steelers teams above them, I can't in good conscience do that. So, but then number 2 is where my bias is going to come out a little bit. I've got the 78 Steelers at number 2. This is pretty. The Steelers obviously had a lot of good teams in the 70s. They won 4 Super Bowls during that time, so it's kind of hard to not include at least one of those teams. I've got 2 of them on the list, but I'll start with the one. The 78 Steelers is usually regarded as the best in that group. I mean, this team is usually it's when like everybody came together, because the 74 and 75 Steelers, it still had a lot of like a little bit of leftover players from the previous years where they weren't as good, whereas 1978 was when they had, I think it was like 10 Pro Bowlers on this team, and like all 10 of those Pro Bowlers were like eventual Hall of Famers. And the offense, the defense, the steel curtain was, the force in the league. And to make it even better was the fact that, they knocked off the defending Super Bowl champions. The Cowboys had just won it the year before. And I think it was more proof that, like, the Steelers were still the best team of the decade, because the Cowboys were kind of trying to vie for that, and they really wanted to make up for the fact that they had lost that first time in the Super Bowl to the Steelers, and the Steelers were like, no, we're still the best team, and took them down again. So I think that really cemented their legacy. And then, of course, they won the Super Bowl the next year too, and the rest is history. But so I got the 78 Steelers on this list at number 2. Number 3, probably what everybody thought was going to be number 2 on my list, but it probably will be on the. I think it is on the other guys' list, either 1 or 2. The '85 Bears. I mean, the greatest probably like 1-year team in the history of the league. Unfortunately for the Bears, they could never, because at least for like the Dolphins and the Steelers, they had a lot of like continued success with those teams. I mean, the Dolphins were really good in the early 70s, the Steelers in like the mid to late 70s, but unfortunately for the Bears, they're not really remembered. The Bears. They're not really remembered for much else other than this season. The '86 Bears were also fairly decent, but other than that, no one really remembers them for anything except this one season. The 46 defense, they were 15-1. The only team they lost to was the Dan Marino-led Dolphins, and I mean, everybody remembers their Super Bowl too. They absolutely destroyed the Patriots in the Super Bowl. It was like 46-10 or something like that. So, very, very dominant. Then I've got the '89 49ers on this list. This is the largest. This is actually a Jeopardy question in one of the previous Jeopardy, the final Jeopardy question. The largest margin of victory in any Super Bowl, the 49ers beating the Broncos 55-10. And I mean, I think this is true for a lot of these kind of dynasty-like teams, that the later years of their dynasty are usually like the better years, because like early on they're still kind of in the middle, but they're still winning, but they're not quite truly dominant. But then you kind of get to like year 3, year 4, and now you are like the dominant team. So I feel like that's the way it was for the 49ers this year. Montana and Jerry Rice, this was the second Super Bowl that they won together, and the 49ers they had the top offense in the year, and with Roger Craig, and I think a lot of people underrate their defense too. No, everybody thinks about Montana and Rice and Roger Craig, but they forget about the great defense too. Then at number 5, I had to try and decide which of the 2 Cowboys teams between the 92 and 93 Cowboys to put on here. I went with the 92 Cowboys because I was looking at their record. They had one more win in 1992, and their playoff wins were a lot more dominant in 1992, because I know obviously they beat the Bills 52-17 in the Super Bowl, and I know that they beat the Bills 30-13 in the second Super Bowl, but in the second Super Bowl they were actually losing that game at halftime. Like, the Bills were actually on course to win that Super Bowl, but the Bills just somehow, as unfortunately for my dad and all Bills fans out there, as the Bills always seem to do, the wheels just kind of came off, and the Cowboys took over in the second half, and they scored like 20 unanswered points or something like that. So that's why I went with the 92 Cowboys. Then I went with the 1996 Packers at number 6. This was the only time that Brett Favre ever won a Super Bowl. And this is Reggie White was on the team, and the Packers came in with the number 1 offense in the league. And, this was the high moment of Drew Bledsoe being in New England. Everybody thought that he was going to maybe do something with the Patriots, but the Packers were there to kind of close the door on them. And also very interesting that this was the only Super Bowl in history that a special teams player won the MVP award, with Desmond Howard and his kick returning to win the MVP award. It wasn't Brett Favre or anybody like that. It was Desmond Howard, apparently. So then I went with the 84 49ers. This was, another thing like the Steelers. Like, I felt like I kind of had to put like 2 49ers teams on this list, and I went with the 84 49ers. This was the first time that Montana and Rice were together in the Super Bowl. So they were like, I can't remember their record. They were like 13-3 or 12-4 in the regular season, and very, very good year. Then the 1975 Steelers at number 8. It's funny, I didn't even realize this picture has a number 8 next to the 75 Steelers. That's perfect. This was I think this Super Bowl was a lot better for them. Obviously, like the first year, they were kind of figuring everything out. This year was when they, were truly dominant. And I remember watching, again, the America's game on this team, and they actually got embarrassed really early in the season by the Buffalo Bills. O.J. Simpson ran for like 200 yards on them, and he was like the only guy to ever run for 200 yards on the steel curtain, and they were like, yeah, we're never letting that happen again. So the defense really locked down. And like I said, also with the Super Bowl, this Super Bowl was more exciting because the first Super Bowl against the Vikings was kind of like, Franco Harris won the MVP, even though he didn't really do too much. It was just because nobody else really did anything in the game, and Franco Harris like got like the only real touchdown for the Steelers in that game for the most part. So, but this time Terry Bradshaw and the rest of the team actually showed up in the Super Bowl, and it was a good game against the Cowboys. Then I had number 9 was the 2004 Patriots. This was another team. I had a really hard time deciding which Patriots team to put on this list, and I went with the 2004 Patriots for the reason that this was, I think, their best Super Bowl win. In the terms of that, you had the first 2 Super Bowls they won with a field goal, like a field goal at the end of the game to win the game. And then you have the fact that they honestly should not have beaten the Seahawks or the Falcons in the Super Bowl. Like, I'm still baffled that they managed to win both of those. Like, obviously the Seahawks run the ball, and then the Falcons blowing that 28-3 lead. And then finally the one against the Rams was just probably the most boring football game I've ever watched in my life. So I went with the 2004 game. They pretty much dominated that Super Bowl against the Eagles. The Eagles were trying to come back at the end, but it wasn't. They couldn't do it. And then obviously that 14-2 regular season was nothing to sneeze at. They did break my heart that year though, because that was Roethlisberger's rookie season, and they made it to the AFC Championship game, and the Patriots ended that dream season for the rookie quarterback, unfortunately. But so I went with the 2004 Patriots there, and finally at number 10, I decided that I was going back and forth whether I wanted to put them on this list or not, but I decided that I would put the 2007 Patriots on here because obviously they went undefeated in the regular season. But the reason why they're number 10 on this list, and the reason why I contemplated even putting them on this list, was because obviously they lost the most important game. When you go, the 85 Bears went 18-1, but that one was in the regular season to the Dolphins. The one in 18-1 for the Patriots was the Super Bowl. They didn't win the big game. They were not the world champions that year. So that's why I don't think either Zach or Eric have them on their list because, normally you'd think you'd want to include all Super Bowl champions, but I was like, well, I guess I'll give them credit. And I couldn't really think of another like good team in my head that I really wanted to put at that spot. So I put the 2007 Patriots, but I would definitely not put them any higher than number 10.
All right. Yeah, it's an interesting list. And this following list by Nate kind of contradicts quite a few things that Connor said. So I'm really interested to see where Nate's going to go with this, because my list definitely is closer to Connor's than Nate's. But Nate, take us off.
Yes, I've got definitely some more hot takes here, I guess you could say, but I'm lead off with number 1. I'm going with the 85 Bears for number 1. And some of the reason I kind of like explain, but I think out of all these teams, they dominated the most on the way to their eventual championship. Just the way their defense played, obviously that year, everyone knows how good they were. Held opponents to 12 points a game, which is pretty crazy. And then they were so far ahead of the league too in points allowed per game. It wasn't just that they were good in there, but like they were so much better than everybody else. They just steamrolled people. They steamrolled my Patriots in their first Super Bowl appearance. Beat them by like 30 points, which just flat blowout. So I had to give them the number 1 spot just for that kind of level of dominance. And then at number 2, this is one of the 2 main hot takes on this list. I put the 2007 Patriots. I know I'm definitely a little bit biased in this area, but just when you look at what this team accomplished, like, yes, they lost the Super Bowl, but it's kind of like I went from like my kind of like rationale for this list was not so much like exactly what they did as far as like wins and losses, but more so like how great like were these teams. Like, not that necessarily having the best roster makes you a great team, but I kind of like took that, I think, a little bit more into account than you guys did. But I just had the 07 Patriots because you look at the connection of Brady to Moss, the guys they had on defense like Teddy Bruschi, Rodney Harrison, Asante Samuel, like Vince Wilfork, like they were loaded, and they are another team that just cruised past everybody. And They're the first undefeated regular season since, and first and only one since the Dolphins did it, and they had an extra 2 games. The Dolphins only had a 14-game regular season back then, so I give them credit for that huge achievement. And they lost the Super Bowl, but I don't think it's like should prevent them from being, recognized as one of the great teams ever assembled. So then number 3, I've got the 1990 or 89, 89-90 49ers. That was another team that was just crazy, like roster construction. They got Joe Montana, like Jerry Rice, Ronnie Lott, like all kinds of Hall of Famers all over the place. And they're another team that just like thumped everybody in their way. So I had to give them number 3 spot. Like Connor said, biggest Super Bowl blowout ever, which you get the second best team in the league apparently, and you do that to them. You definitely got to get some points for that. And the number 4, I'm definitely going to get some heat for putting this low, but I put the 72 Dolphins there, which obviously they deserve a ton of credit for going undefeated. Even though it was a shorter season, like nobody's done it in the, what is it, almost 40 years.
54 Super Bowls and 100 years basically of the NFL.
Oh, I guess you talk about the whole history of the NFL.
Yeah,
I was thinking since they did it, but yeah, no one did it before them either. So yeah, it's a crazy achievement. So they do get props for that, but it's just when I look at this team, it's like, can you really say that? And not that you want to do head to head, because you could be here all day talking about which one of these teams would be the best. But it's like they ran through teams that just came over from the AFL a couple years back. They weren't, you know what I mean? Like the level of competition I don't think was as strong as some of these later teams played against. The league was kind of still coming into its own. So which not they don't deserve credit. They had all kinds of legends on that team as well. So I think really top 4, like I can't really, argue against it, but I've just got them a little bit lower than I think you guys do. But yeah, going to number 5, I've got the 90. Which year was this again? 92,
I think.
Yeah, 92.
92.
Yep, Cowboys. Forgot. I should have done what you guys did and put more pictures that had the years in there. But this is my first Cowboys team on the list. You got this picture of the triplets there. Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irvin. That was a nasty team as well in terms of just roster talent that I think very few teams have been able to ever put like that kind of Hall of Famer at quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, and plus some other positions on offense and defense. So that was definitely a nasty team as well. And then number 6, I've got the 78 Steelers. The only Steelers team on my list. But that defense back then was incredible. And for that era, like that was dynasty of the 70s. And I think that was the best team, my personal opinion, out of that dynasty. So they definitely get, huge credit for that. And then number 7, I've got the 95. Yeah,
96.
96. Yeah, my years with all these are getting tricked up because like the Super Bowl is like the year after. So like I see they won the Super Bowl in 90.
Yeah, I know the date.
Yeah, it always gets messed up. But so those Packers, I think that was the best Packers team. Like I want to put in one of those the older like 60s Packers, but I just couldn't really justify like putting a team when the league had like 8 teams in it. Over some of these other teams, but this team was legit. They had young Brett Favre, Reggie White, the probably top 5 defensive ends of all time. You definitely can make the argument for number 1. And they just steamrolled people again. You see my Pats there in the picture. The first 2 times they made the Super Bowl before the Brady Belichick era, they just got thumped by a couple of legendary teams. Some unfortunate times to make the Super Bowl coming out of the AFC those years. But another great team there. And then number 8, I definitely should have picked a different picture than just Joe Montana sitting there because this was the oh boy. I meant to make a
Which
note of
team did
this.
they beat in the Super Bowl?
80,
Was it the 84 maybe
it
or
was
something?
I think it was the 84. Yeah, the
The
84
one that we all
49ers.
have probably.
Yeah. I think I just put a different picture for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why I did
Generic
that.
Joe.
Yeah. I guess I didn't notice you guys had a picture in there already. But yeah, so that team before Jerry Rice got there, so if you were looking at the head-to-head thing, they probably won't be as dominant, but
Oh, so that'd be the 83 49ers then if it was
80,
before Jerry Rice got there. Or like 82 or 83 then.
looking at
No, I think they had. I think they
84.
had him. This pretty sure is the 84.
Yeah,
Well,
either
Well, no, I'm saying like if he's saying that that he wants the 49ers team from before Jerry Rice got there, then it would be the
well, I'm looking at
it'd be the 81 49ers before Jerry Rice got there.
oh, I've got I don't know, I had Pro Football Reference up and it was 84. I didn't see Jerry Rice on the
84 and
roster. I
they
could have
played the Dolphins.
mistaken.
They did. Jerry Rice was on the roster.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is that's
It's
my
okay.
bad. Well, yeah, same team there. Yeah, but that's kind of off
Here, I'll
topic.
fix it for you. I'll fix it for
Yeah.
you. Keep talking.
But yeah, basically what you guys said is a great team, great roster as well. And then in ninth, I've got the 2003 Pats. Like Connor said, I think this is. I went through all the rosters, and besides 2007, of all the Super Bowl winning Pats teams, I think this is definitely the best one. Most complete roster. That's another loaded defense with Richard Seymour, who's probably gonna make the Hall of Fame soon, hopefully. Again, Rodney Harrison, like all those guys were there. Mike Vrabel. And then they beat the Eagles, not in blowout fashion, but they definitely controlled that game. They ran through the league, only lost 2 games, I believe, our regular season. So I think it was by far the most complete Pats team of the dynasty. And then in 10th place, coming in to round it out, I've got the 1974, I believe, Cowboys.
No.
No. Shoot.
I think you're
Should've
thinking of
put the
the 71 Cowboys.
Yes, that's the one with Roger Staubach. The original quote unquote America's team. Definitely like were a dominant team, but also like the impact they had with, bringing in that kind of term like America's team. They had a couple of like, Roger Staubach was the veteran. They had, they brought in like the cheerleaders and had the whole like thing going on that kind of like revolutionized the NFL a little bit. So in addition to what they did on the field, which was obviously dominant and helped kind of spark a little bit of a Cowboys dynasty there for a while, that was another huge team as well. So that's kind of my list. I know it's a little bit, some things you
bit
kind
out
of
there.
debate a little bit there. Yeah. Some interesting selections, but that's just how I kind of saw it. So interested to hear
Yeah.
what you guys have.
With all of these lists, there's always one person that is a little bit out there. Usually it's me, to be honest. It's usually the one most out there, but this one I think goes to Nate.
Yeah. Had to keep it interesting.
yeah, of course. So basically all of my pictures have shown up on other people's slides, but I'll go through them 1 to 10. So number 1, obviously, I have to pick the only undefeated team, the Dolphins. They really should have won that Super Bowl, like Connor mentioned that story before. It should have been 17-0 with the score 17-0, but that blocked field goal attempt and then the kicker like just fumbling the ball. I mean, it's one of those things. It's a greatest.
You tried to
fall
throw it up
time.
for some reason.
Go watch the video. You'll get a laugh out of that. But luckily for the Dolphins, it didn't ruin their it didn't cost them the game and the greatness. Can you imagine that? But no, that's why the score looks a little closer than it deserves to be. But that Dolphins team, I got to put it number 1 for their perfectness. And then number 2, the 07 Patriots too, but the other closest team to perfection, the 85 Bears I have here. Really, I think this would have been a more intriguing Super Bowl if the Dolphins had made it with Marino. That would have been really because they were the only team that beat the Bears in the regular season. So if that rematch had happened, that could have gone down, I think, as one of the best Super Bowls of all time. The Dolphins had a couple more losses that year, and then obviously they lost to the Patriots to make it to the Super Bowl. But really fascinated to see how that would have turned out if the Dolphins had made it, if the Bears had won or not. Obviously, I still think they would have, but they lost to them the first time, so you never know. And then the third greatest team I have on my list, the 89 49ers. This is before my time, obviously, like Connor and Nate, so I didn't watch this team growing up or anything, but just looking at the score, it tells you all you need to know. 55-10 against the Broncos and John Elway says a lot about both sides of the ball, being able to score 55 points and being able to hold a Super Bowl opponent to 10. That's greatness on both sides. So they're number 3 on my list for that. And then I've got another 49ers team because everybody knows the 49ers were so dominant back then. This is the 84 49ers, I guess, when they beat the Dolphins in the Super Bowl 38-16. Just another great team, just slightly less achievements, I guess, than that 89 team. Like Connor said, the dynasty set in and matured over time with that thumping of the Broncos. I think I just made that word up, but we'll go with it. And then I've got the 96 Packers here. Another great team littered with sorry. Everybody just got a spoiler of Eric's list there, but littered with greats like Reggie White, Brett Favre, and really destroyed the Patriots in their Super Bowl win too, which gives them credit for that. And then I've got the Steelers teams here. I've got the 77 or 78 team. Yeah, 78 team. I don't know. This one actually had the year right on it.
Yeah.
But they were pretty dominant too from what I looked up. I don't know as much about them as Connor did, so he explained most about them, but they deserve to be on this list, obviously, like we all have them. And then I've got the back-to-back Dallas Cowboy champions here. This one, I don't know if this is the year that you guys were talking about with the other Cowboys teams, but
no, you got the
yeah,
you got the 93. Nate
yeah,
got the 92.
Yeah.
It was close here between the two. You can go apples to oranges, but Aikman, I think he had a little bit better of a year, and the defense I think was a little bit better for the season. That's why I put him on here, but it's really can be interchangeable. Then I've got the 75 Steelers on this list. Another dominant team in the 70s, just like the 78 one, just a little bit less, I think, but still deserving to make this list. So I'm appeasing Connor with 2 Steelers teams here. And then, like everybody else has had so far, the 04 Patriots, that was the best Super Bowl winning Patriots team. Nate talked about all those great players on that team, and that was the one Super Bowl that wasn't controversial. It wasn't one where they needed a field goal to win it by Adam Vinatieri, or they needed a blunder called by Carroll or Shanahan with the Falcons lead and everything. So it was the one that they really earned the most, I think. I mean, there was those losses to the Giants. I mean, that one with the crazy catch, they probably didn't deserve that, and that would have been a perfect season for them, but it happened. So that's why I don't have any non-Super Bowl teams on this list, just because it did happen. But then number 10, I wanted to pick a team where I know the one before that, number 9, I was alive for, but I really didn't watch or remember football from back then. So I wanted to pick a team that I did remember. And the Eagles from just a couple of years ago, their Super Bowl win, they were actually a really good team. They were 13-3 in the regular season, and this is modern NFL football. So this is where you can go from last to first, which is basically what they did the year before. And like I said, last to first, though, also means you have a really competitive schedule, and there's hardly any easy wins with how much parity is in the league now as compared to back then. That was Nate's kind of explanation for why he had some of the more recent teams up there and the 72 Dolphins lower. But this is the Eagles were a team that did win a lot of games in the really competitive era of nowadays. And there's a lot of great players that were on that team on both sides of the ball. And Carson Wentz, he would have been the MVP, I believe, if he had been healthy for the whole season. But obviously, he went down, and Nick Foles stepped up, and that's where they really suffered. I think two or maybe three, all three of those losses in the regular season were from Foles. Probably just because the backup being just thrust into play. He was a great backup, obviously it turned out, but the thing with Foles is he did take a little bit of time in the regular season to get used to football again for the playoffs, but the Eagles, and then obviously you can't talk about the Eagles without talking about that playoff run they had, and the Falcons game was close, but between the Vikings game and the Patriots game, that was arguably the greatest playoff stretch by any Super Bowl winning quarterback. And nobody would have expected it with Foles, of all people. So really, they had two great quarterbacks on that roster because Wentz was having an unbelievable season until he got hurt. League MVP frontrunner. So you have that, and your backup quarterback played arguably the greatest two games in playoff history. And they beat the almighty Patriots, too, to top it off. They beat Tom Brady, who threw for like a playoff record. So that team, it was great defensively when it had to. The Super Bowl, it wasn't, obviously, but the offense was great too. So that's why I've got the Eagles team. They were, out of all the teams that I've witnessed win Super Bowls, they were the best, in my opinion, to do so. But we'll go on to Eric's list here and wrap up this show with his top 10.
All right, you guys. So I guess with my list, I probably have the most different ones that nobody else had, but nevertheless, I'm excited to present them to you guys here. So, like everybody except for Nate, I have the 72 Dolphins at number 1. The reason why I could see them not being number 1 is just because their playoff run wasn't necessarily as dominant as some of these other teams, but I put them number 1 because they are the only team to go undefeated from start to finish, and it may never happen again. So I recognize, the amazing, accomplishment there. So that's why I'm keeping them at I kept them at number 1. I actually did debate not having them there, but I was like, no, I gotta keep them at number 1. Number 2, 85 Bears. I mean, they've been talked about a lot in this already. One of the greatest single season performances ever. If it weren't for the one loss they had during their regular season, they would probably be number 1. And moving on then to number 3, 49ers over Broncos. That was my final Jeopardy question, as was talked about, with which team had the largest Super Bowl victory. And the 49ers, just from 84 to 94, were generally impressive with 3 Super Bowls during that time. But I chose to highlight this one as my favorite run by them. I just felt like it was the most dominant, and I have to give them a lot of credit. So that's why I got them at number 3. So moving on to my first one that nobody else had on their list, the 62 Packers. This was definitely going way back, but when I was researching teams, the greatness of all these teams, I chose to put them in there because they also, like the 85 Bears, they only lost 1 game. They had a just dominant playoff run. Bart Starr, at that time, the NFL was obviously not a passing league back then, but he was one of the only quarterbacks in that time to complete over 60% of his passes. So back then that was rare. They also only gave up 10 touchdowns that season and had 31 interceptions defensively. You'll notice on my list, and Zach and Connor obviously know this with, like, when we play video games, that when we play like football and basketball video games and stuff, that I really like playing defense more than offense. I value, offense, obviously you have to score more points than the other team, but I just really enjoy, watching a great defensive performance. So when I saw, these types of things that the 62 Packers did, I was like, I had to put them in my list. And then kind of a similar reason why I went with the 75 Steelers instead of the 78 Steelers. I know we were kind of talking about this off the air before we started. They had a ton of Hall of Famers on that team. In 8 of their 14 regular season games, they held their opponent to 10 points or fewer. And they also only gave up an average of 12.3 points during the playoffs. I mean, you want to talk about a season just falling into place. I mean, that was pretty awesome. And then next I have the 04 Patriots. I felt like going from like 03 to 04 combined was just an amazing run for them. And so that's why I went with this Pats roster. I did consider putting their Super Bowl team in there where they made it to the Super Bowl and lost, where they were undefeated but then lost in the Super Bowl. But I ultimately decided that, if we're talking about the 10 greatest of all times, that it should be teams that did win their championship that year. So ultimately I left them out. Otherwise I would have had them on here. But in terms of their teams where they, won the championship at the end, I felt like the 04 Patriots were the best. And then Susan will be happy with this one for me having the 92 Cowboys on there, although maybe she would say they should be higher. But but obviously a great run from the Cowboys here. I like this picture with Troy, Emmett, and Michael. I mean, they were the bases of that team. Everybody knew them. And just another pure dominant team. And then at number 8, so my last 3, 8 through 10, nobody had any of these 3 on their list. But when I was researching some of these teams, the 1991 Washington Redskins were another just force of nature. They're, again, like me liking defense, looking at the stats here, they only gave up 224 points the whole season, which was second fewest that year. And they also had the highest turnover ratio at plus 18, which that's rare to have a turnover ratio that high. And in the Super Bowl against the Bills, they got up to a 24-0 lead. I mean, I know the final score was, I think it was 37-24 or something like that, but
something closer than it was.
It really wasn't that close.
My dad will tell you, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, so just a dominant season for the Redskins there, so I had to feature them. And then the 2000 Ravens, the only thing I don't really like about them is that Trent Dilfer was their quarterback, and Zach knows about this. He's a huge Jaguars basher. So not a.
Yeah, I don't know why, but he is.
He hates us for some reason. I don't like.
I've never understood why, but yeah,
I get why like Shannon Sharp hates us because we beat them in the '96 playoffs, which was one of the biggest upsets of all time. But I don't really get why Trent Dilfer hates us so much, but he does. But
considering he's like not, a nobody,
he's not the reason why. The Ravens are on this list. They're on this list. I mean, this was arguably one of the greatest defenses of all time, especially when you get into more of the, quarterback and pass happy eras of football. I mean, in terms of teams that have played 16-game seasons, they have the record for fewest points allowed in a single season at only 165 points. And they played 4 playoff games, and they only allowed a combined 23 points, 7 of which was on the kickoff return in the Super Bowl. I mean, they only gave up 1 offensive touchdown that whole playoff run. I mean, that's just insane. If they had a more potent offense, they could have been much higher on the list, but I put them on there just because of how insanely good their defense was. And then going on to the opposite side of the ball, I put the 99 Rams in. Up until like the Chiefs these last couple seasons with Mahomes, like the 99 Rams could be argued as one of the greatest offenses of all time. I was a big Kurt Warner fan, a big Marshall Faulk fan. I enjoyed watching them play. Obviously, Zach and Connor and our Uncle Mike will be glad that I put them on here, being a Rams fan. And they also did beat, even though it was only by, it came down to a single yard at the end of the game, they did beat the Titans in that Super Bowl. And obviously, as a Jaguars fan, I hate the Titans. So thank you, Rams, for winning that Super Bowl. But I know, like, while none of the other guys had them in their top 10, I'm sure, like, this would be a team that, would have been, I'm sure many people would consider them as a contender for a top 10 greatest team of all time, in terms of, like, while they may not be in the top 10, they could be debated as being in the top 10. I enjoyed watching them play. So that's gonna do it for my list. While the other two I didn't care as much if you agreed or disagreed on. This one, I put a little more effort into this one, so hopefully people will agree with me a little more.
But he still won't care.
Awesome. Yeah, I know, Eric. He still won't care. That's awesome, man. Yeah, so there you have it, guys. It's the top 10 NFL teams of all time by myself, Eric, Connor, and Nate. We all gave you our opinions for them. Hopefully you enjoy this episode. And yeah, we will be back in a week's time or so.
Bye.
Peace.